Antonil Tulian Meldanine, and thank you once again for joining me. My name is Lord Aramil, and today we will be getting back into some Dungeons and Dragons thinking. Now, last time I talked a bit about my disappointment with Undermountain as a pre-made adventure. But this time I'm going to be talking about another campaign that has gone surprisingly well. I shouldn't say surprisingly, but better than expected even. We'll go with that. Now, I'm trying to think about how much background is actually necessary, and probably not a huge amount. So, the characters are in knockoff Egypt, basically. Fantasy Egypt. But one of my characters one of my players, I should say, has been asking for Fight Club, Fight Club, for a couple months now, actually. So I finally said, fine. There's an arena. There are gladiators. People who fight here. Whether or not that is historically accurate is inconsequential, to be entirely honest. So, hoping that my audio is okay, because I just realized that some of it was turned off. Anyways, so my characters sign up for this gladiator fight. And honestly, it's gone pretty well. So I'm going to relate to you some of the tips and tricks and other things that I think really helped and really made it both an excellent DM tool and just an excellent thing kind of in general. I'm going to pop out the chat also in case some of my friends wander in. Alright. So, first things first, I think it was good that I started off with a beast fight because it gave me extra time to actually prepare interesting gladiators, which is good. Beast fight, fun. Honestly, hello Teru, speaking of. But, the real value of the beast fight is a fight where the characters do not have to hold back and can defeat a monster that is basically just a random encounter table. I don't have to explain why this creature is here. I don't have to make it make sense that the creature lives here. There's no problem of... Oh, audio is low? How about that? Any better? Hopefully that fixed it. Oh. Too far away. Okay. I mean, if this doesn't work, then I'll fiddle around with it more. Okay. So, gladiator fighting, cool. Beast fighting, very cool, because there are a few, I'll say that I have been in a campaign that was just a series of rooms that were unconnected with random encounters just placed there without any real regard to why, how long have they been in here, etc. And that campaign was very rough. That person had played all of like 3 sessions of D&D, maybe, before deciding that they wanted to DM, and I could go on about that campaign. Sorry if I go on a little bit, or get off topic. This is my first cup of caffeine today. Oh, sweet caffeine. I mean, yes, I don't have a problem. But, the Gladiator. Fights in the Gladiator ring do not have to make ecological sense. For example, my players fought a dire tortoise. I think I mentioned this before. Did I? Yeah, I did. I did a whole thing about tortoise and the hare. I made a joke about that. But, so, yeah. They didn't have to figure out how a dire tortoise existed in this arena. They just know that the grate opened and somebody pushed out a dire tortoise, which ran them over before they were able to actually defeat it. And that was fun. Now, after that, it gets even more interesting, because I split them up into pairs. So I have 5 characters, one of which is pretty much distinctly, one of which who is very much focused on social interaction, roguishness, and that kind of stuff. So he didn't partake in the actual 2-on-2s. He's still in on the beast fights, which is good, it's fine, but he didn't really want to get in there mano y mano, and that's fine. That's fine too. He made a mint pickpocketing the crowd and betting on the other guys. That's good. This is hilarious in my own mind. He also made some pretty good business deals, which is excellent for actually advancing the plot outside of the sands of the arena. I wish that tea was not as cold as it is. So, one of the things that I found really nice is I had the opportunity and the reason to make NPCs. That'll do it then. There. But I had the opportunity to make NPCs who were the same level as the player characters and equipped to a similar level without worrying about the player characters getting their hands on, this kind of wealth. No matter what, when it came to the opponents, the player characters were not going to get a chance to loot the bodies. Mainly because I had it so that the idea was once you hit single-digit hit points, you were supposed to yield. Historically speaking, gladiator combat was not a death sentence, unless it was actually supposed to be a death sentence, and in which case you were more likely just chucked to some vicious creatures, and yeah. But gladiators often had long careers. Maybe not as long as they would have liked, granted. But these were basically trained professionals. A bit more like, I hesitate to say UFC fighters, but something along those lines, though with a significantly higher mortality rate. But it wasn't like 50% of all gladiators die every fight. I don't remember the actual statistic, I'll be honest. But consider it more like 10, 15, maybe 20%. I'll have to go back and actually try and find some of that data. But you do have records of, this gladiator won so many fights and lost so many fights, and the fact that the lost is more than 1 or 2 is pretty indicative. Oh, tea's good. So the point is that, and I maybe impressed upon the players a fair amount that they were not supposed to kill their opponents. Which is great because it made the barbarian worried. She was actually very self-conscious by the end of the second fight about how she had almost killed her opponent like twice now. And that was hilarious in my own mind. I'm certain that she was actually very worried, and that's good. You want the characters to be aware of the restraints placed upon them, but more like in a self-imposed manner. Like, yes, I told them you're not supposed to kill your opponent, but then the characters embrace that and like, we cannot kill our opponent. We have to defeat our opponent. It's an important thing. The other part that was really fun was the crowd system. Now, what I did was kind of a rough amalgamation of what is in this book here, Complete Warrior, for D&D 3.5. I play 3.5, but if you play 5th Ed, then this can be pretty easily adapted. Basically, what it is a list of things where if you do X, then the attitude of the crowd might improve or worsen. So you could, if you roll a critical, if you confirm a critical hit, the crowd cheers and likes you more. If you roll a natural 1, well, the crowd boos and attitude worsens. You get the idea. If you disarm an opponent, attitude improves. Trip someone, destroy their weapon. Tumble successfully through an enemy square. These things are ways that you can improve your own standing with the crowd. If you successfully do a feint maneuver, the attitude towards the opponent worsens. If you demoralize them, intimidate them, whatever, you worsen the attitude of the crowd towards your opponent. You get the idea. Is you can really play into this, and it really rewards skillful combat, which is something that I feel doesn't get enough traction in D&D. Like, I have seen some terrifying, absolutely terrifying, trip specialist fighters. So don't get me wrong, these things do exist and they do happen, and people do use these rules to an extent. Of all this, I think I've only really seen trip and occasionally feinting done in combat. I actually had a character try to sunder one of the player's weapons, and she was most distraught that this was a possibility. So sometimes it pays to just play through the pays to read through the player's handbook. I need more tea. Alright. So yeah, the idea is that I was able to make skillful NPCs that were reasonably, if not equivalently, equipped And perhaps most importantly, these were characters that were designed to do one thing: fight in the arena. While your average adventurer has to diversify, they have to be very good at a number of different things. But not one of my gladiators had to worry about search, spot, listen, definitely not open lock or anything like that. So they were pretty good. You might have a couple knowledge ranks in there for kicks or for flavor. Maybe a couple languages if they are from a more exotic locale. But that's about it, honestly. And that's one reason why they gave a lot of my characters such a run for their money, is that these were dedicated combatants for this specific kind of encounter. And that's honestly, one character was very pissed because I had a a character who is designed to say "fuck you" to missiles, and his main shtick was throwing, and is throwing a javelin, especially since this character could fly. So he couldn't run up to this guy and, attack him in melee, and he couldn't throw a javelin at him. So he was kind of SOL. Until, very quietly, I informed him about the idea of readying an action. Again, pays to read the player's handbook. So, and people might say, well, wow, you really just sticked over that guy. But really, if you think about it, it wasn't just me picking on this poor character. That's a really strong shtick, a really strong manner of combat, especially if the idea of a battle mage entering into the arena is foreign or just almost ludicrous. I basically said that in this specific arena, battle magic really wasn't a thing, so meh. So this character said, okay, I can't be hit in melee, and I can't be hit in ranged, so I'm good. And I can just fly around with my little winged sandals, because it was kind of like a Hermes martial artist knockoff. That's what it basically was. I think his name was Hermanos, something like that. And that was that. And it was good. So he basically flew around doing flying kicks. And yeah, it was a very good character, and a very strong character, I should say. Worked out pretty well. He survived the longest, and it was kind of a heads or tails flip on whether or not he was going to beat the characters. I actually left it up to the dice to see who he attacked the last strike, and if he had attacked somebody else, it might have turned out differently. It's just what happens. So it was really interesting. It was very... I don't know what the best way to say it is. It helped to remind the characters that they are, in fact, still mortal. They are still not the biggest fish in the pond, which is kind of an important thing to remind characters when you start out at like level 3 and you've advanced all the way to like, I think are we level 8 now? Something like that. So every so often, putting the characters through a very difficult fight that while they have a fair chance of success, they have a chance of failing too. So they have all the resources they need, but they could definitely fail if they don't use those resources correctly. And of course, the Gladiator tournament that I've got isn't quite over yet, because they've beaten all of the NPCs. But remember how I mentioned that these are two-man teams? We have 4 combatant player characters. So, we've got a combat left. Yeah. We get to have player-on-player fighting. A little bit of player-on-player fighting. There's been a little bit of trash talk. Summon bigger fish. There has been a little bit of trash talk between the player characters, which has been hilarious. But we're about to have character-on-character fighting, which is... I think this is great. This is going to be hilarious. Because as a DM, I don't have to do anything. I just have to basically sit back and play ref. Just like, okay, here you go. How you doing? What you doing? Like, I don't have to worry about stats. I don't worry about, fiddling with hit points. Nothing. It's the dream, really. Basically, though, it is... I won't say it's going to be a one-sided fight, but the the most magically adept and well-kitted out side is more apparent. So, there could be an amazing upset, and I'm kind of hoping for it just for the wow factor. I'm hoping that it won't be just a quick fight. And that's kind of one of the things I'm going to impress upon the players, is that if this fight doesn't last at least 5 to 10 rounds, the crowd is going to feel kind of cheated. And this is an important thing. You need to impress upon the players that this is not just a fight. This is a show. This is something that people paid money to see, first off, and probably have a lot of money just riding on the whole thing. Like, we want to see this great clash. We don't want to see, 2 people get steamrolled in 20 seconds. That's boring. Or if not boring, it's just less than what it could have been. So you could, and remember that at least in 3.5, and I think in 5th, I could be wrong, a round is only like 6 seconds. So if you take out your opponent in just a couple rounds, it's not a fight. It's like warm-up stretches. Think about Gladiator movies, and again, this is not a historical matter at all, but think about how long people would spend, or wrestling, or UFC, or whatever, people might spend, it's especially wrestling, actually, but we'll stick with wrestling, because that's more about, flashy showmanship than actual fighting capability anyways. So, yeah, I went there. What you can do. But the idea is that you spend time boasting, showboating, ah, ah, you know, get the crowd on your side, make them feel, both involved but not involved in the combat. Which leads me to another fun point, actually. The crowd did not pay X amount of money to be put in mortal peril. So, if in your arena you do allow for magic, you... yeah, right. You have to impress upon your players that, okay, these are the dimensions of the arena. The walls are X high, and then there are people, civilians, people that you are not allowed to hurt. So if the wall is only 10 feet high, and then there are people, your spellcaster better be really, really careful about using that fireball. Honestly, area of effect spells are probably just a bad idea in general, but I'll leave that up to you. Basically, for me, I said, like, hey, flashy magic, while impressive, is generally not seen as socially appropriate in these battles, so either keep it to visual effects that basically do nothing, or more subtle magic. During the beast fight, my more interaction-based specialist guy, who is, funny enough, I think is he a war mage? I think he's a war mage, actually. Like war mage rogue, fun stuff. He used True Strike. Yes, I think. Whatever it was. Basically, the first level spell that gives you plus 20 to hit on your next attack. And you use that. And, I mean, that's perfect. That is almost the ultimate in not magic. It's just, you are buffing your capabilities for a single attack, and it really just looks like you did a really nice attack. And you use that to, like, shoot one of the dire tortoise's eyes and half blinded the thing. So, hell yeah. It was really well done. And it opened up opportunities for the other characters to basically blindside the tortoise. It's good. Very good. So, if you are planning to allow very flashy, very powerful, and destructive magic, I would have you turn to, especially if this is in Forgotten Realms, there's a book called Magic of Faerun. It's a surprisingly short book. I think, one I have is a paperback, actually. And it has rules for a mage duel. And I would definitely look into those if you're interested in a caster-on-caster sort of fight. It has a lot of really interesting rules. The most important one is the creation of the bounds of the mage duel. Mainly, the idea is that both mages will agree upon, the exact dimensions of the mage duel. For an arena, this might already be in place. Whatever. You get a round or two of prep, and then go. You're in the arena, have at. And it really serves to both contain epic archmage duels and make them non-lethal. Which is kind of the purpose of Mystra, Goddess of Magic, when she instituted this idea. It's just, okay, we're done having archmages just blast a countryside because they had a spat. You two sit in this small bubble way over here and think about what you've done, and more importantly, fight it out. And both of you can walk away from that. It works. I mean, it's a really brilliant idea, honestly. Oh, sorry. Oh, I did not sleep well, and this is definitely not enough tea. But yeah, that's gladiator fighting in a nutshell. Ooh, one last thing, and I think that's all I have, but equipment as a gladiator. And this can shift a lot based on your player's level and how both realistic and how devious you feel. Historically, gladiators fell into one of several kind of categories, almost classes. Actually, funny enough, but you know, if you were this kind of gladiator, you wore this, this, and this. Done. If you were this kind of gladiator, you wore this, that, and that. Done. So, if you want a more historically accurate type of gladiator fight, you might have the players ditch their normal equipment for standardized outfits, which could be an excellent way to nerf your characters in a very what's a good term? It controls the character's abilities, because suddenly, you know, that fighter isn't wielding a +2 flaming burst longsword. They've got maybe a masterwork spear. Have at it. And shush you. Man, I wish I had more sleep. But in this case, you know, they have all standard equipment, and all the opponents would also have kind of standardized equipment. So this prolongs a fight, so that, you know, people aren't using off just, you know, a dozen magic items, which basically make them impervious to damage, and then burning through opponents. These are important things to keep in mind, and actually, it can work both ways, too. If they are low-level player characters, you might say that all the equipment is masterwork, and it might be, honestly, better than what the PCs have normally. So, you know, it is an equalizing factor, which is good, honestly. You want all of the combatants to be equal in everything except skill. That's really what a good gladiator match should entail, is you want skilled fighters doing flashy things to entertain the crowd. I will leave off with a funny finisher regarding the final battle of the last session. So remember that the guy was a flyer, okay? And they were fighting a flyer and an Amazon archer specialist. Now, the Amazon could have been played a little bit better on my part, which is kind of the downside of making 8th level characters, is you have a lot of options, and as somebody who hasn't been playing that character for, a year, you don't always know the best option. It happens. So they basically focused after probably 3 or 4 rounds of, trying to fight everything. Well, both, I should say. They're like, you know what? Hold on, time out. We need to focus on one opponent and then take care of the other. And we're going after the Amazon because she's on the ground and we can hit her. So after a little bit, they did eventually manage to take her down. And now, one of the characters, De Shong, is basically a knockoff Sun Wukong. Right? That's kind of his shtick. That's what the player is going for. So he has a staff of sizing. So it can go up to, like, colossal size. So it turns from, size of, a large pencil, sticking in the ground, and suddenly it's a massive pillar. So he used this to no small effect. Basically, he noticed that the guy was above him and sized up the quarterstaff, basically bopped him real good between the legs, which caused no small amount of bemusement and pain to this flying figure. Now, this is all very well and good, except maybe not immediately, but a round or two later, flying figure is in line of that quarterstaff, and the other character, who is very admittedly frustrated at this point, being unable to do really anything against him, decides that he's going to knock this massive pillar over onto the flyer. And at that point, it's a great idea in a vacuum, but what he didn't really think about was this pillar now is like 50 feet tall or something silly like that. And they are within 50 feet of the arena wall. So he topples this pillar. He hits the guy and also causes this massive pillar to fall into the crowd. I figured that with the size difference and how the wall was, it didn't quite crush people. It probably caused a bit of property damage and maybe hurt a few people. And I basically, after the fight, had the arena folks come up to them and it's like, and we're going to fine you 200 gold because people are hurt now. We have to repair our wall, and don't do that again. So it was it was funny. It was a bit not humiliating, but it did make the players a little bit sheepish for a minute or two before realizing who their next opponent was going to be. And, it gave people a laugh and a reminder that they aren't just fighting, they're putting on a show for a crowd that is right there. But with that in mind, I dare say that's where I'm going to leave off for today. Leave a like, leave a comment, If you use any of this in any Gladiator combat, let me know. So, until we meet again, dear friends, hunt on the Ildulian, and farewell.